Next, we will learn to meditate on non-self. This meditation instruction doesn't emphasize examining non-self, because once we have thoroughly meditated on multiplicity, impermanence, and suffering, we will easily recognize that there are only aggregates without a self. The characteristics of self are permanence, singularity, and freedom. As ordinary beings, we mistakenly believe that the self is inherently unchanging. If it changes, there will be two selves. The characteristic, freedom, means having control. An entity entirely controlled by others is not a self. However, the aggregates are multiple, not singular, momentary, not permanent, immersed in all-pervasive suffering, not free. Therefore, the first three analytical meditations are the foundation for realizing the fourth insight. Usually, we perceive the self as singular, believing that the same self spans from the past to the present and even into the future. Moreover, we think the self has control and freedom, believing it can exert its will over things. Now, let's examine whether there is a permanent, singular, and free self. If the self exists, it should be either identical to or distinct from the aggregates. If the self is distinct from the aggregates, it would exist outside them. In that case, when experiencing pleasure or pain, the self would not feel them. When the physical body ages, the self would not age. When seeing objects or hearing sounds, the self would not perceive them. But where is such a self without feeling, perception, or form, like a barren woman's biological child? We can never find it. Ordinary beings who haven't followed non-Buddhist teachings won't believe that there is a self outside the aggregates. Next, let's examine the absence of self within the aggregates. Afterward, within these five aggregates, composite, impermanent, and the basis of suffering, look for what we call I. You will find there is no I. After meditating on suffering, observe what exactly this self is within the five aggregates, composite, impermanent, and the basis of various sufferings. If we investigate, we will see that the self doesn't exist like a barren woman's biological child. The basis of suffering, composite, and impermanence are the nature of the five aggregates in the conventional reality we conclude from the above analysis. The third line investigates which part of the aggregates is the self. That is, ask yourself, is the head I? Are the hands I? After raising these questions, the sixth consciousness examines the head and other parts, revealing their characteristics of multiplicity, impermanence, and dependence on others. Through such analysis, we can discover that there is no permanent, singular, and free self within the aggregates. 1. Reflect on multiplicity and realize the emptiness of a singular self. First, let's examine how the aggregate of form comprises multiple parts. In a general observation, we can see the skin, hair, flesh, blood, bones, internal organs, stomach contents, pus, excrement, urine, etc. With a more detailed observation, we can see cells. Every organ in our body is composed of cells. with even finer observation, we can see that cells are composed of proteins. Further observation reveals molecules, atoms, and ultimately indivisible particles. Our physical body is nothing more than a composite of these parts. Yet, we cannot find a self within them. Through such analysis, we can conclude that there is no singular self in the aggregate of form. Next, observe the aggregate of feelings. Examine the various pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings one by one. They are multiple, not singular. Then, observe the aggregate of perception and the aggregate of mental formations. We often regard the aggregate of mental formations as I. Ordinary beings typically regard the entire 5 aggregates as I. We think, I am thinking, I am doing something, I am eating, I am working. In reality, the doer is not I, but the mental factors of the aggregate of mental formations, operating with their momentum. As for the aggregate of consciousness, we believe, I am recognizing, I am discriminating, I see something, etc. In reality, the subject is not I but consciousness. As ordinary beings, we tend to mistake the 5 aggregates for the self. Typically, we identify the body as I. Thus, we take care of it and dress it up to please others. Women, in particular, often spend a lot of time and money on their appearance, applying makeup or even undergoing cosmetic surgery. Just to gain admiration or attract affection, they may think, let other women envy me, let all men like me, and are willing to invest heavily to win the affection of others. In reality, the body is not you. It is merely a smelly skin container. How deluded we are. Observe and remind yourself daily that the body is just a skin container. Starting with the skin, examine whether there is anything lovely about it. We often cling to the appearance and color of the skin. But if you were to peel off the skin and see the flesh and blood inside, you would be horrified. Would you still have attachments? Of course not. What we cling to is the appearance and color of the skin. Observe it carefully. Is there anything adorable? It's like dry earth full of lines and pores. The pores contain dirt and excrete oil and sweat. The skin has many wrinkles, harboring impurities, bacteria, and numerous hairs. Everyone has hair all over their body. Ordinary beings cannot see clearly and perceive the skin as shiny. If the hair is long, like Sun Wukong, it will look like a monster. The skin of the physical body is what we are most attached to. Besides, we may also cling to someone's voice or 6 consciousnesses. If their 6th consciousness is sharp, we may also find them attractive. Moreover, we may also cling to their aggregate of mental formations, which refers to various mental factors. When their mental factors manifest what we call temperament or disposition, we may find it pleasant and cling to it. In reality, all these things arise and cease from moment to moment. At one moment, someone may appear gentle and considerate, but in the next moment, they may become like a demon ready to devour you. These aspects are changing because, in their 8th consciousness, there are seeds of both gentleness and ferocity. Therefore, human beings are ever changing. Don't consider change abnormal. It is normal. Each of us has been reincarnated as various beings in the 6 realms, carrying different karmic tendencies. Some tendencies remain dormant, but once they manifest, you may not even recognize yourself. By observing the 5 aggregates in this way, we can see that they are all impermanent. Dispositions, too, are impermanent. Next, let's analyze from the perspective of impermanence. 2. Reflect on impermanence and realize the emptiness of a permanent self. First, we should understand 3 points. 1. If something is permanent, it should maintain its characteristics without any changes. 2. If a new entity arises, the previous entity must have ceased. 3. Any process is formed by the accumulation of momentary changes. Without the changes from moment to moment, no process can arise. If you observe the processes of mental or physical activities, you won't find a permanent self. For example, when listening to 5 minutes of music, the sounds we perceive must arise and cease in each moment. Otherwise, it would be impossible to form a piece of music. Observe our 5 aggregates. The aggregate of feeling is relatively easy to observe, because our body constantly experiences pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. At any time, our body can experience various sensations like pain or itchiness. These are the changes in the aggregate of feeling. The changes in the physical body, such as the growth of hair and nails, are not easy to observe. If you were in a place without a mirror, like on a deserted island, you might not even notice that you are aging. Only when you see spots gradually appearing on your hands might you realize that you are getting older. Moreover, thoughts also change. The impermanence of the first 6 consciousnesses, such as eye and ear consciousnesses, is apparent. Body consciousness, which is most closely related to the aggregate of feeling, involves bodily sensations. We can easily observe the impermanence of the 6 consciousnesses. 3. Reflect on the dependence on others and realize the emptiness of a free self. Examine how the 5 aggregates are bound by karma and afflictions, immersed in all-pervasive suffering, and devoid of freedom. The 5 aggregates are bound by karma and afflictions beyond our control. For example, when desire arises, it's not something we consciously choose. It happens because the seed of desire emerges. However, clouded by ignorance, ordinary beings mistakenly believe, I am craving something. In reality, it's the mental factor of greed at work, and it can instantly turn into anger. The mental factor of anger emerges. When mental factors function, we have no freedom. By analyzing the 12 links of dependent origination, we can see that the 5 aggregates are conditioned phenomena, constantly controlled by karma and afflictions. With the condition of ignorance, formation arises. Formation doesn't arise freely. It is driven by ignorance, just as fire relies on fuel and wind. When formation creates karma, the seed is instantly imprinted in the consciousness. Does this seed have freedom? No, it relies on the formation of karma. In other words, how these seeds are nurtured and what kind of seeds are nurtured is entirely determined by formation. When these seeds ripen, they give rise to rebirth as name and form. Therefore, formation gives rise to consciousness. and consciousness gives rise to name and form. Upon rebirth, name and form appears. Name and form doesn't arise out of nothing or emerge freely. Instead, it arises from the power of fruition consciousness, combined with the parent's blood and semen. Hence, name and form also depends on other factors. It is not a free self. Name and form refers to the body-mind complex. At this stage, the six sense bases haven't arisen. It is simply a collective term for the body and mind. Thus, name and form gives rise to the six sense bases. As a baby grows, the six sense bases arise. After that, the mental factor of sensation arises. Sensation gives rise to craving. Without sensation, how could there be any craving? With craving, one seeks to grasp. Without craving something, one wouldn't grasp it. Craving gives rise to grasping, and grasping leads to potential existence. Only after grasping something can one possess it. Without grasping, subsequent existence is impossible. Existence leads to aging and illness. After being born, one gradually ages, falls ill, and eventually dies. Meditate on the 12 links of dependent origination in this way. Refute the belief in singularity by seeing multiplicity. Refute the belief in permanence by seeing impermanence. And refute the belief in freedom by seeing suffering. Hence, we can realize that the five aggregates are not a permanent, singular, and free self. What we call the cycle of birth and death is merely a continuation of similar aggregates from the causal stage to the resultant stage. We cannot find even the tiniest self. By meditating on non-self, we will see that there is no I. In reality, self is just a label. We simply assign the name, I, to the composite and momentary aggregates. In different situations, we can assign different names to it. For example, we can refer to the five aggregates that perceive objects as a perceiver, the aggregates that do something as a doer, and the aggregates that practice the dharma as a practitioner. Apart from the conventional label based on the five aggregates, there is no permanent, singular, and free I. However, it's said that sentient beings firmly cling to this illusory I, like a barren woman's biological child, and remain ignorant throughout countless cycles of birth and death. The five aggregates are not I. This is a truth. There is no I. You can give yourself a name like five aggregates. Many practitioners are accustomed to using such names, but some may not be used to it, which indicates that they haven't started to practice non-self. When cultivating the insight of non-self, you should get used to referring to yourself as disciple, five aggregates, so disciple, so and so five aggregates. It is just a label. We are different from moment to moment, not permanent, singular, and free. Our names are conventional and don't exist inherently. Our true nature is the same. It has no name and doesn't need one. Therefore, we can give ourselves countless names. The Buddha can have countless names because he transcends name and no name. What we call a Buddha is not a concrete being. Where is the Buddha? There is no specific object. This is inconceivable, beyond the comprehension of our worldly intelligence. Don't ponder it illudedly, as you cannot figure it out. The first thing we should be able to understand is that the 5 aggregates are not I. Continuously meditate on the absence of I in the 5 aggregates. So, what do you cling to? If you nurture this insight thoroughly and diligently, you won't have time to create negative karma. Use the time you previously spent creating negative karma to practice the dharma. Thus, your time spent creating negative karma will decrease, and your time dedicated to practicing the dharma will increase. Gradually, you will transform